Hello everyone, my name is Rachel and I'm here from Happy Silver People, and I'm delighted today to have with me Stef. And Stef, actually, I think maybe I'll let you introduce yourself because you've had a very interesting, varied background, and I think you're going to do it justice. So would you like to share a little bit about you?
Sure. Okay, well, I grew up in a council house with 6 brothers, and we didn't have a lot of money. So I really wanted to sort of go on to further education, couldn't afford that. So I went into nursing because you got paid to be a student nurse. Right. And I loved it. I have to say, I loved it. I embraced everything about it. That was when I was 19, qualified at 22. Then went on, and my passion was for cardiology, so I did a lot of cardiology, went to Hammersmith Hospital, blah blah blah, worked around a lot, did a few training bits, moved into health promotion, which I really enjoyed, and I again was focusing on heart health.
Yep.
And then I got a job with the British Heart Foundation, and I worked for them for 12 and a half years, say. And I was a cardiac project manager, and I basically worked with health professionals, helping them set up cardiac rehab. I set up lots of new resources. I set up a whole scheme for teenagers, and worked with lots of people, worked with lots of organizations who aim to help older people. And one of the things we found was that actually heart disease is quite debilitating, and cardiac rehab is a wonderful thing. But we found that people with a very positive attitude who were saying, yes, I can do this, I will do this, recovered so much better and were less likely to have a second cardiac event than somebody who sat there and said, I can't do it, I'm scared all the time. And I felt terribly sorry for these people, particularly their partners. Do you know, there was a thing, so many partners of people with heart disease told me that they spend their nights putting mirrors under their partners' noses to see if they're still alive. Terrifying. So both people suffering in a relationship. And so one of the things we got into with cardiac rehab was very much being positive, showing the good points, showing how you can recover, showing you life goes on, and it can go on. And I think that's been a bit of an ethos. When I left British Heart Foundation, I did a few other things. I was a volunteer coordinator for a stately home. But then I went into teaching, and got my degree at 45 and did my teaching diploma at 52. My family think I'd just like being a perpetual student. So,
well, it sounds like perfectly qualified to be talking to me about Happy Silver People. That's so interesting what you're saying about the impact a positive attitude can have, a positive impact on your body, your physical state, as well as your mental health. So yeah, really interesting to hear that. And I'm wondering whether positive is one of the words that you chose to apply to you, one of your descriptors, or did you choose something different?
No, I didn't actually choose that word. No, not
okay.
So we chose articulate, which was one of my husband's words.
Yeah.
Constructive. So I guess that's positive.
Positive.
Yeah. Caring.
Yeah.
Supportive. Yeah. Enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Knowledgeable, creative, assertive. I am assertive, loyal, and I have a tendency to be a bit impatient when things don't go well. So
so nice mix there.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yes.
That's sound perfect, but I'm really not.
I think the caring and supportive has already come across, and the articulate has already come across very well. I suppose I'm quite interested in creativity. How does that manifest itself, and how does that help you, as you're going through your day-to-day life?
Okay, when I was working, it was very much around coming up with new ideas. and I was very lucky to be given a fairly free rein to do that. One of the things that when I was in the British Heart Foundation, for example, we never worked with teenagers, and I saw it as a gap. Now it's a big part of what they do. I came up with a thing called Meet at Teen Heart, which I appreciate sounds like a dating agency, but it wasn't. Teenagers are pretty neglected. So there's lots of stuff I did around that. But I'd always enjoyed storytelling, and I'd always wanted to write a book. And you know, it's one of those things, isn't it, that you sit down, I write a couple of chapters, and then something else comes up. You know, my daughter phones because she needs help, or my son wants something, or my husband needs help with, well, anything to do with the computer, actually, apart from Zoom, as you saw. But he, you know, so there's always an excuse not to do something. And I had started a new novel, which I'm halfway through now. But I'll be honest with you, I came across Michael Heppell and his masterclass, first his free pop-up group. Well, before that, sorry, take a step back. I decided to go to a creative writing class shortly after moving to Norfolk in the next village. And the lady running it, Sue Burge, was a lecturer and a poet. And she was really good. She said to me, I said, oh, I'm not really into poetry. Can't rhyme to save my life. And she said, oh, you don't have to. Modern poems don't rhyme. Just go and do something. And she advised me to take a notebook and go for a walk over to on the coastal path. And I wrote my first ever poem. And I am about to, well, I'm editing at the moment, but in March, I'm hoping to publish a short story and poetry book. And the poems have all come about as part of my experiences with my family, with my life. That poem, the very first poem I ever wrote, is in there. And a few other poems that Sue encouraged me to write. So that's where it started. I thought, I can do this. This is great. But still, that procrastination came along, and I just thought I could sit down and write it and give it to someone else. And then, as I say, I've discovered Michael Heppell and discovered you can't just write it and give it to somebody else. You've really got to do loads. So, so actually, I've got a children's book that I'd written and that my daughter is illustrating for me. I am halfway through my novel. I have finished my short story and poetry book, and I've drafted a fairy story for my granddaughter.
Okay,
so that's
a lot of creativity there. Yes, yeah, definitely. And I think some of your poems, Steph, are around growing older. Is that right?
Yes.
Could you say a little bit more about what's motivated you to write those poems? What?
There's one poem called Finding Me, and it's the only poem that's about a man. It's from a man's perspective. And Finding Me was inspired by my father-in-law, who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's very early on, very early 60s. And he died when he was 69 with full-blown Alzheimer's. And we saw this wonderful gentleman and this thing taking him completely. He wasn't an unpleasant, even with Alzheimer's, he didn't become unpleasant, but he did become, I guess, a bit of a danger to himself. So he ended up in a care home. Yeah. And just the poem talks about, he used to be a great rugby player. He played for his local team in Birmingham, and he was considered really good. And of course, rugby was an amateur sport back then, so you never were going to get paid for it. It was the accolades and the beer, I believe, that kept them going. Yeah. But he went from being a director of a company to being somebody who didn't even know his own children. And that's really what the poem's about. It's about the only thing in the poem, it talks about a rugby ball being important. And was he a fighter? Was he a gladiator? Because he could hear the roar of the crowd. And he said a fort in it. I say a fort is important, which I'm talking about Twickenham. because it's called The Fortress, isn't it, at Twickenham. So there's that one, and that's a very personal one. And I had to check with my mother-in-law really to make sure she was happy for me to include that, and she is. She says she's dying to see it in the book. She's really looking forward to seeing that. Another one is called Mummy, and that is inspired by I was reading some Facebook memes. At the time, there were loads of Facebook memes saying, and my daughter and my niece and a few other young people were very obsessed with these memes saying, I have to look after me and to hell with everyone else, were basically the messages. I was saying that's really selfish, because there's a knock-on from that. You look after you, but then what you have to pick up the pieces. So that's what the poem's about. And then I suddenly realized it was turning into me. And the poem goes on to discuss the death of my mother and losing my mum. And that, I still get quite emotional when I think about writing it, actually. So there's that one. There's a poem about the birth of my granddaughter. There's quite a long poem about my grandson with special needs and the issues that we've gone through there. You know, so there's various ones. And I keep thinking of more, and I've got to stop. I've got to stop putting more in.
Right, Steph, that's been really interesting. I think we're going to have to wrap up. But is there anything?
I did warn you, Rachel. I warned you I could talk for England, really.
I did want to very briefly touch on your going back to study at an older age, and how that was for you, particularly being amongst younger people. I don't know if you've just got anything. Would that be something you'd encourage people to do as they grow older, to still consider?
Absolutely. I love, do you know, I've got friends still from when I was teaching who are so much younger than I am. I mean, some of them are younger than my own daughter, but we stay in touch through Facebook and things like that. But it's so lovely to get messages from them and to have been treated as just the same as them. You know, they were good friends. When you're in the same boat studying, the idea of your age soon goes. I mean, if you want to sit there going, oh, well, I was your age, love, you know, that's never going to go down terribly well. But when you say, hey, who wants to join me at the pub? Bush, they're there, you know, it's fine, it's great. Or let's go and have a coffee and have a moan about the lecturer, whatever it is. I loved it. I absolutely loved being with those age groups. And of course, being with people my own age, there's one or two sort of around my age there too. But I loved it, absolutely. It was the experience of learning, you know, and I think that's so important. And I think the thing to keep you, I think there's a quote by George Bernard Shaw. Now, what was it? You don't stop playing because you grow old. Right. You grow old because you stop playing. Never, ever stop playing. You know, my grandkids and I were lobbing bits of pasta at each other at the weekend. We were having a great time. So, you know, made a mess, but hey, who cares? So
I think it's a perfect place to end, I think.
Yeah.
Great advice there, and I should be taking that up too.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to witter.
No, I've enjoyed talking to you. Thank you very much. Okay. And I hope you enjoyed listening to Steph as well. And you'll join me again on Happy Silver People very soon. Thanks very much for watching.
Thanks.